Alright, welcome back everybody. It's your boy Dragothian here. Today I've got another Rise of Kingdoms video. We're going to go with a general commander for our next Commander Mastery Series guide. I've stepped up the game just a little bit when it comes to the talent builds. For these commanders going forward, I wanted to give you a visual representation versus kind of piecemealing things together inside of the actual build tree for the commander. So with that being said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over for this particular commander the talent build first, then I'm going to go into the pairings, and then I'm going to have a quick summary at the end of my screenshot, just summarizing what the commander's for, their high points, and what really they should be used for on the open field or if it's a siege or things like that. So with that in mind, Scipio Africanus, y'all know him, you love him, you hate him. It's one of the three. There's nobody that's just kind of lukewarm on this guy. You either really like him or you really hate him. He's a general commander, which means by default he's not great at a whole lot of things, but he's really there for your utility. So with that in mind, let's take a peek quickly at the three different talent trees that he's got available, as well as the skills that he brings to the table before we jump into the talent tree itself. So first off, he's a leadership, he's a conquering, and he's an attack commander. Now, based off of what we've already talked about in previous Commander Mastery Series guides, leadership is okay. It's a good general talent tree. It gives you just different things when it comes to boosting your stats and your skill damage and rage and things like that. It also gives you some troop capacity bonuses, which is always nice to be able to bring more troops to the field. But conquering is obviously very specific. It's only going to affect watchtowers, garrisons, walls, those types of things. Very rarely are there any general type of talents inside of that tree. There is one, and we will go over it, and that's the one actually we're going to go ahead and get if you have this guy as a primary. But as you will soon learn, and there's Ronnie sending a barbarian fort, as you'll soon learn, we generally don't want to use this guy as a primary commander, and I'll tell you why in just a little bit. So let's quickly go through the skills. First skill is actually one of his best assets in the entire setup here. So for 5 seconds, so once he casts his active skill, for 5 seconds, you reduce the damage taken by troops. So when the troops attack, not skill damage, so troop attack is reduced by 25%, which is pretty substantial, especially considering this is a general commander. It's not a infantry, cavalry, or archer specific type of commander. 25% troop damage reduction is pretty significant. Okay. Also, you increase your troops' counterattack damage by 25% for 5 seconds. Counterattack damage is really good when it comes to being a infantry commander, which is going to be one of the pairings that we go over and what this looks like. I think at the end of the day, though, the combination of these two, you're going to reduce the damage you take from troops, and you're going to increase your own troops' counterattack damage by 25%. That's pretty significant. That's a pretty good overall first active primary skill, and one that we definitely use whenever we're talking about pairing this guy up with anybody in particular. All right. Now the second one is a little bit more of a utility skill in the sense that it's a chance to fire. It's a passive skill, so you don't have to worry about it casting. But when attacked, Scipio has a 15%, and this is because of his expertise. Sorry, my mom went blank there. Without the expertise, it's only a 10% chance, but there's a chance to increase the troops' damage, or troops' attack, by 100% for the next 2 seconds. Effect can only trigger once every 5 seconds. Scipio also has, again, I think goes from 10 to 15 with the expertise, 15% chance to heal a portion of his slightly wounded units, healing factor 500, when his army is less than 40% of its units remaining. Again, this is a pretty nice skill, but A, it's a random fire. B, the second half of the skill requires you to be at 40% troop health, which is never good, right? If you're at 40% troop health, unless you're more than what your opponent is, that's not going to help you out. And again, I generally don't tend to spec commanders into chance type situations where you got a 10% chance to do this, or you got a 5% chance to do this, or you have a 50% chance to do this. There's commanders that give you an 80% chance to do something. It's not necessarily bad that you get it, because in this situation, you're going to get it either way. But whenever you're talking about a talent situation, you'll notice that my talent builds tend to be more geared towards, I want to know exactly what I'm getting. I don't want to worry about, oh, am I going to possibly get this if the stars align and everything just works out the way I want it, or is this going to work every single time exactly the way I plan it, so that when I send this army out, I know exactly what I'm looking at as I'm fighting and as I'm getting that army back or whatever else I need to do. So I prefer to lean more towards the definite versus the chance, at least for armies where I know that I'm not kind of throwing it on a wing and a prayer. Okay. So pretty good skill overall, but again, not the greatest, not the worst. I think that there's time and place for this, but it's very situational at best. Now, the Conqueror of Africa. Passive skill again, increases all damage. So again, all damage meaning troop damage and skill damage, so nukes. Increasing all damage by 7% when attacking another governor's city. That's pretty substantial, especially for an epic commander. That's pretty good. I mean, there's legendary commanders like Mehmed and others that have a higher damage bonus, and they may have a secondary kind of perk to it as well. But for free to play, this is actually really nice. And again, this skill will be active whether this commander is primary or secondary, because skills are always active. It's not a primary or secondary thing. Talent trees are only is what's used for the primary commander and an army group, not the secondary. I've gotten that comment over and over and over again, trying to figure out what the secondary commander's talent tree should be. That doesn't matter. That doesn't apply whenever you have two commanders in a single group. Okay. The fourth skill, and probably one of the most used skills in this commander, is the 10% troop capacity bonus. So anytime you can bring more troops to the battlefield in a single army, that's going to benefit you greatly. If you got 10% more troops than your opponent, you're going to be 10% more effective at least. And really, that does tend to be an exponential increase, because not only are you 10% more troops, you got 10% more troops doing 10% more damage, and then 10% more defense for all your other troops. It just stacks up. A lot of it just stacks up. So the more troops you can bring to the battlefield, and that's why those 50% army enhancement cards are so powerful and so expensive, because if you can bring 50% more army troops per army than your opponent, you're going to win. You really don't have to have the best build, the best talents, the best skills, the best commanders, the highest level tier troops. When you've got 50% more troops than your opponent, as long as you're somewhere in the neighborhood, generally you're going to win. Okay. Now again, the expertise bumps up the second skill from 10% chances to 15% chances. Again, I'm not a huge proponent of these types of skills. They're good. They're not great. This one bumps up the percent chance that it could happen or trigger. It also bumps up a smidge on the healing that you get when you're above or below 40% troop count. And it also extends the duration of the first part of this skill from 1 second to 2 seconds. Again, it's nice. 2 seconds of extra damage, 100% extra attack is pretty good in a long battle, especially if you're sieging a city. That can stack up. I will say that, again, you generally want to be using the person who's sieging the city needs to be the person that is T5, that has leveled out, maxed out legendary commanders with the highest troop tech in your academy. I think that if you're using Scipio to be your sieger, which you'll notice I did not actually put together a conquering talent path for Scipio, because you really shouldn't be using him as a primary commander. and I don't want to enable that by giving you a, especially as a primary commander for a rally on a city or rally on an objective. You really shouldn't be using him as a primary, so I don't even want to enable you by giving you a talent tree from Scipio for that purpose. I do have a talent tree lined up, which I'll go into right now, coming up here in a second, for just general purpose, open field. Again, I don't think it's good for you to be using Scipio as primary because I'm not a huge fan of the attack skill, attack talent path. Okay, leadership again gives you some perks and bonuses, but for the most part, I'm not a huge fan of the combination of leadership and attack when you can pair him up with an infantry style commander that can give you the infantry talent tree, which is far more effective than the leadership talent tree or the attack talent tree. Okay, so if you can get an infantry and attack like with a Yulji, or if you can get an infantry and skill with a Sun Tzu, or if you can get an infantry and defense with a Charles or a Richard, certainly those are going to be much better off for you than leadership and attack. Okay, so let's go into the actual talent tree, and I'll briefly go over it because this will also apply to anybody that has these three talent trees, which should be Scipio, Julius, and I think that's it because everybody else is either garrison or skill for the blue tree. So let me bring it up. All right, so this is Scipio's talent tree right here. This is the way I did it. And again, I eliminated, just like I told you before, I've tried to eliminate as many chance to trigger stuff as possible in favor of things that are going to happen all the time. Now, I will say that Martial Mastery is one that I did go after. And again, and what this does, that's this one right at the bottom, where you see the very bottommost blue dot. It increases normal attack damage by 2%, but decreases active skill damage by 1%. That's at the base. At the maximum, it's 6 and 3. And you want to use that if you're using a primary commander or using a secondary commander that doesn't use a nuke. So, for instance, it's Charles or it's Julius or something like that, where their active skill is not a nuke, it is a damage factor absorption in Charles's case, or it's just a buff or a debuff in Julius's case. Barca does have a nuke, but it's very small, so that could also apply there as well. That skill damage reduction doesn't really impact it too much. 3% of 400 damage, not very much at all. It's usually about 10 damage, so something like that. So with that in mind, this is how I've broken it down. So 39 talents in the leadership tree, that gets you up to strategic prowess and close formation, which are two very solid skills or very solid talents. 28 talents into the attack tree, which gets you effortless, which is one of the best skill or best talents in this talent tree, in the attack tree. It also gets you martial mastery, which is again the one at the very bottom that I talked about. And then 7 points into the conquering tree. And the only reason I did that was to get moment of triumph. So what moment of triumph does is it, while the army led by this commander is at more than 90% strength, increases all damage by 9%. So pretty substantial when, if you think about it, any army that's got Scipio is going to have more troops in it. So that 10% of your troops at the very beginning should last technically longer than if you didn't have a troop capacity expansion like a leadership commander gives you, like a Scipio, a Julius, a Barca, Frederick, Mehmed, things like that. Osman even, okay? So to me, that's very important to have if you're going to have Scipio as a primary. Again, don't recommend it, but if you're going to, this is the build that I would use. It gives you tons of extra perks. It gives you tons of extra stats. It gives you lots of extra damage for your troops. It gives you good defense, and it also gives you good movement speed. Along with that moment of triumph, that first 10% of your troop capacity, you're going to be doing some significantly higher damage because of the moment of triumph that you have there. Okay, so that's my talent tree. Take a screenshot of it if you want. This is the way to go, in my opinion. Now let's also bring up the pairing. All right. So this is the pairing guide. And again, you can, because he's a general commander, you can pair him pretty much however you want. You don't necessarily have to follow just this specific setup. These are the ones that I mostly recommend, and I've got Joan of Arc at the bottom there as well because she's also a general commander that you can kind of pair up, and you can actually use Joan of Arc as primary or secondary in this situation, which is why I don't have a P beside the name. Again, this is the PvP column, so the one with the helmet. Julius Caesar primary with Scipio secondary, to me, is the best way to go. Again, because of the way that Julius's main skill works, it benefits for him to be the primary. Charles the First, again, being primary because he's going to get the defense as well as the infantry trees, and this is the same reason for almost every guy on here being primary. Eulogy, same thing. He's got the infantry and attack tree. I would still use the attack tree that I put for Scipio on this guide, but I would remove martial mastery and go more into the infantry tree, getting the health bonuses and things like that, and then maybe go into some of the garrison talents in case you need to pop into your city for something in the arc or things like that. Sun Tzu and Scipio is actually one of my go-to free-to-play infantry tank armies, and very, very solid. I wanted to put Eulogy in there just ahead just because he's more of a infantry style commander. He's not necessarily so geared towards nuke because of the attack tree, but I actually personally prefer Sun Tzu over Eulogy when it comes to those type of situations. But you can kind of test it out and see how well they do for you and fit your play style. Those two are really interchangeable for me, but again, both of those need to be primary. Osman is another really positive and good choice when it comes to pairing up with Scipio. One, because he's got the skill talent path, which is really nice for his nukes, because he's got quite a few nukes. But the other cool thing is they both have the troop capacity increases on their skills. So you got 10 from Scipio, and I believe you get 10 from Osman as well. That's pretty significant when you pair that up with a 50% army expansion buff as well. It's 20 plus 50 plus the 200 that you usually should be able to bring to the battlefield. That brings a pretty significant amount of troops to the battlefield for somebody who's just using 2 epic commanders. And if you can start really getting in the face of somebody who's already been kind of getting beat on a little bit or isn't running a fully legendaried out group that is maxed out commanders and things like that, you can cause some pretty significant damage on the battlefield. So I would also, again, put Osman in with that Sun Tzu Eulogy category. Charles is always going to be the best, I think, Charles and Julius, because their skills complement each other so well with Scipio when it comes to the tankiness piece of things. But if you need a free-to-play version of those two types of setups, Eulogy, Sun Tzu, and Osman are ways to go, and you won't be hurting with either three of those combinations if that's what you've got to work with. And again, Osman Scipio combination is known as a punching bag. That's because they have so many troops to bring to the battlefield. They have more troops to get killed. It takes longer for them to get killed. So again, I did want to mention Joan of Arc just because you can do a mixed troop style army with Scipio because he doesn't have a specific type of troop talent tree. You can do a mixed troop with Joan of Arc and Scipio, and you can do a support build with Joan of Arc primary, or you can use that build I just showed you earlier with Scipio as primary and have Joan of Arc secondary, have all of those buffs going on, affect your entire team, affect all of your armies, affect all of the different things that you're trying to do on the battlefield. That would certainly work. Don't recommend it if you have these other options available, but if you have to have this in a pinch, it will certainly work. Use that talent build I just showed you. You'll be in really good shape. As far as the PvE side, where the farm icon is looking at, again, he's not really meant for PvE. I mean, he's got the ability, certainly. You can pair him up with any of the people that I just talked about, or anybody really, and it will be fine as long as he's a secondary commander. It'll give you a little bit more tankiness, and if you get under 40% health, you have the chance to do a little bit of healing and things like that. But PvE is not really a garrison damage type of thing. So if you wanted to use him in PvE, you certainly can. Use him as a secondary commander. put any AoE commander as in front of him as primary. That's your Baybars, that's your YSG, that's your Sun Tzu. Kusunoki will certainly work as well. Any commander will work. That will give you more ability to hit more barbarians with less action points, which is always a good thing. But again, you'd probably be better off putting a Richard as secondary, or basically any other commander would be just as good, if not better, than Scipio, but you can use him. Okay, so as a summary, and this is something I'm wanting to add to the rest of my Commander Mastery series, and I may kind of put it in the description of my previous ones as well. I wanted to do like a quick checklist on what this commander is for, and why people choose him or choose her versus somebody else, or what kind of makes them special, right? So first off, the biggest thing to note with this commander, again, and I've already kind of discussed this at length for the entire video, make Scipio a secondary commander. Generally, the people that you're going to pair them up with are going to be better as primary because of their talent trees or because of the way their skills work than Scipio. So make Scipio as a secondary. That means that you can do the 4-star trick without having to level them up past level 10. This is a good idea to do. If you want to know how to do that, please check out one of my earlier videos that shows you how to do that. That way you don't have to waste any books or waste any XP for getting, from barbarians, leveling this guy up past 10. Most of us have gotten Scipio and probably got him to at least 30 or 40 just by playing with him and doing things and that kind of thing. But if you have the opportunity, to me, I would never make this guy over level 10, because you can unlock his 4th star and go ahead and just unlock all of his skills, max him out, and use him as a really solid secondary commander in the situations that I just talked to you about. Again, the reason I like to use him is because he helps make an army tanky, and the reason that is because of that first skill and the 4th skill. So the first skill giving the troop damage reduction, and also giving the counterattack damage boost for your own troops, but then that 4th skill giving you extra troops on the battlefield. The combination of those two things are very, very nice, especially when you pair it up with another tanky type of troop like infantry. So even if you have a Julius with a Scipio, you could run full infantry and still be really nice. You can run mixed troops too. I would probably still stick with infantry if I could. But that's why Charles, Yulji, Sun Tzu are also good with Scipio as those 3 primary, because of the infantry tree combination with Scipio's skills being so defense oriented with the extra army and with the extra troop damage reduction. Really good free to play siege. So again, have him as a secondary in combination with Julius as primary, or Barca as primary, something like that, if you've got the money into it, or if you've got one of those commanders. Free to play siege with that 7% extra damage to attacking cities. It's not too bad. 7% is pretty substantial when you think about the grand scheme of things, especially whenever you're dealing 15, 20, sometimes 25,000 troop damage plus 100,000 nuke damage on some of these sieges, because of how many troops you're bringing versus the person that you're sieging. So really cool free-to-play siege because of the leadership talent tree. If you wanted to go primary, or more importantly, again, I would go secondary with him and pair him up with another epic or another legendary sieger as primary. Counterattack damage and heal is special. So again, there's not really many other commanders in the game that have that. So again, I wanted to kind of make that his special thing, but really very situational. I wouldn't rely on it. It's just something that could really kind of help enhance the fight for you a little bit, but it's not, to me, it's not going to win you the fight. What's going to win you the fight is the tankiness of the troop that you're bringing, the pairing you're going to pair up with Scipio, making Scipio your secondary commander, and again, just kind of using him situationally and not as a throwaway. If you pair him up with Osmond primary and Scipio secondary, or Sun Tzu primary, or Yulji, Charles, or Julius, you can use all 5 of those options and really have a nice solid tanky group to throw into the Ark of Osiris, or to have as an open field battler whenever you're doing wars in your kingdom, or with KVK coming out. And then with Joan of Arc, pairing Joan of Arc up with Scipio and having a mixed troop style army, that will also help benefit your entire alliance with some really nice buffs too, and some tanky army to go along with it, so that those buffs stay around for longer, which means it's going to benefit your team for longer. All right, I think I've kind of gone through this, and again, I think overall, this is kind of how a generic commander is going to go. If you like this, again, please like and subscribe. I think that with Scipio, you can get a lot of things done, but it's not quite the best of the best, which is why you generally don't see him, with the exception of the free-to-play infantry group that I made. You generally don't see general commanders being the best at things. They're just really good at filling the gaps and filling the spaces, and you can do a lot of damage on the battlefield by having them, but things to replace as you get into the commanders that are more specific into troop types, into actions, things like that. Hope you enjoyed. Again, please leave a comment below if you have some questions. Like and subscribe if you have not, and I hope you all have a good day. Cheers. Enjoy your Easter holiday weekend, and I'll see y'all next time. Have a good one. Take care, everybody.